Here's a question your doctor probably hasn't asked you. How efficiently does your body use oxygen? It sounds like a strange thing to measure, but according to some of the largest health studies ever conducted, this single number, called VO₂ Max, may be one of the strongest predictors of how long you'll live. Stronger than your cholesterol, stronger than whether you smoke, stronger in some studies than almost anything else doctors currently measure. And here's the part that matters most for anyone watching this in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or beyond. This number isn't fixed. It's not something you're stuck with. It can be improved, gently and safely, at any age, without running marathons, without punishing workouts, and without any special equipment. In this video, I'll explain exactly what VO₂ Max is, why researchers consider it such a powerful predictor of health and longevity, what's actually happening inside your body as it changes with age, and, most importantly, practical, low-impact ways you can improve it, starting this week, regardless of your current fitness level. What is VO₂ Max? VO₂ Max stands for maximal oxygen consumption. In plain terms, it's a measurement of the maximum amount of oxygen your body can take in, transport, and actually use during physical activity, usually expressed as milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute. Think of it this way: every cell in your body needs oxygen to produce energy. When you climb a flight of stairs, carry groceries, or simply walk briskly to catch a bus, your heart, lungs, blood vessels, and muscles all work together to deliver oxygen where it's needed and convert it into usable energy. VO₂ Max is essentially a measure of how efficient that entire delivery and conversion system is. A higher VO₂ Max means your body can deliver and use oxygen more efficiently, which translates directly into everyday capabilities. Walking longer distances without getting winded, climbing stairs without stopping to catch your breath, recovering more quickly after physical exertion, and generally having more energy reserve for daily activities. Historically, VO₂ Max was mostly discussed among elite athletes and exercise physiologists, measured in university labs using treadmills and breathing masks. But over the last decade, it's moved firmly into mainstream medical research as a marker relevant to everyone, not just competitive runners and cyclists. It helps to think of VO₂ Max as the combined output of an entire chain of organs, each one handing oxygen off to the next. Your lungs pull oxygen out of the air you breathe. Your heart pumps oxygen-carrying blood through your circulatory system. Your blood vessels, all the way down to the smallest capillaries, deliver that blood to your muscles and organs. And finally, structures inside your muscle cells called mitochondria actually use that oxygen to generate usable energy. VO₂ Max reflects how well this entire chain performs together under real physical demand, which is exactly why a single number can say so much about your overall health. The research that changed everything. Let's look at the data that made cardiologists and longevity researchers take this measurement so seriously. In 2018, the medical journal JAMA Network Open published a study led by researchers at the Cleveland Clinic, covering over 122,000 patients who underwent treadmill testing over nearly 2 decades. The findings were striking. As cardiorespiratory fitness increased, mortality risk decreased in a clear, consistent pattern. And this relationship held true across every age group studied, including patients well into their 70s and 80s. But here's the detail that really stood out. The patients in the lowest fitness category had a mortality risk comparable to, and in some comparisons higher than, long-term smokers. Let that sink in for a moment. Being profoundly out of shape carried a mortality risk in the same range as one of the most well-established, heavily publicized health hazards in modern medicine. And the benefits weren't limited to elite performers. The study found that even moving from the lowest fitness category into the next category up, a modest, achievable improvement, not an extreme one, was associated with a substantial reduction in mortality risk. You didn't need to become an elite athlete to see meaningful benefit. You simply needed to move from very unfit toward moderately fit. Other studies reinforce this same pattern. Research published in the European Heart Journal and elsewhere has repeatedly linked higher cardiorespiratory fitness to lower rates of cardiovascular disease, better outcomes after heart attacks, reduced risk of certain cancers, and better preservation of cognitive function in older adults. Some studies specifically following older populations have found that higher fitness levels are associated with a meaningfully lower risk of developing dementia over subsequent years. There's also encouraging research on frailty specifically. Older adults with higher cardiorespiratory fitness tend to maintain independence, the ability to live at home, manage daily tasks, and avoid falls for significantly longer than their less fit peers, even when starting from similar health conditions. What makes the Cleveland Clinic study particularly relevant for an older audience is that the benefit didn't fade with age. Some researchers had assumed that fitness might matter more for middle-aged adults and less for people in their 70s or 80s, on the theory that other health issues would simply outweigh it. The data told a different story. The association between higher fitness and lower mortality risk was present, and in some analyses even stronger, among the oldest participants studied. In practical terms, this suggests it's genuinely never too late to benefit from improving your fitness, regardless of your current age or health history. Why does this matter so much as we age? Here's something important to understand about aging and oxygen efficiency. VO₂ max naturally declines over time, typically starting in your 30s and continuing at a gradual pace, often accelerating somewhat after age 60 if a person remains inactive. This decline happens for several overlapping reasons. The heart's maximum pumping capacity gradually decreases. Blood vessels become slightly less elastic, which affects how efficiently blood and oxygen circulate. Muscle mass naturally decreases with age, a process called sarcopenia, which reduces the tissue available to actually use the oxygen being delivered. And the respiratory system itself becomes somewhat less efficient at gas exchange. The consequence of this decline is often described by researchers using the metaphor of a physiological ceiling. Everyday activities, climbing stairs, walking to the mailbox, getting up from a low chair, gardening, all require a certain baseline amount of oxygen capacity. As VO₂ max declines, that ceiling gets lower and lower, until ordinary daily tasks start to feel disproportionately difficult, tiring, or even risky. This is precisely why cardiorespiratory fitness is so closely tied to what geriatricians call functional independence. The ability to continue living life on your own terms, managing your own household, and avoiding the kind of physical decline that leads to dependency on others. The encouraging part of this story is that the rate of decline is not fixed or inevitable. Multiple studies comparing physically active older adults to sedentary peers of the same age find that the active group maintains substantially higher VO₂ max levels well into their 70s and 80s. Some studies show fitness levels in older active adults that match or exceed sedentary adults decades younger. In other words, staying active doesn't just slow the decline slightly. In many cases, it changes the entire trajectory. There's a useful way to picture this. Imagine two people at age 70, one who has stayed consistently active for decades, and one who became sedentary in their 50s. Even though both are aging at the same chronological rate, the active person's physiological ceiling sits much higher, meaning the everyday tasks that start to feel difficult for the sedentary person may still feel entirely manageable for the active one, sometimes for another 10 or 20 years. This is really the core promise behind training cardiorespiratory fitness later in life. It's not about becoming an athlete. It's about protecting the margin between what your body can do and what your daily life actually demands of it. How is VO₂ max measured? The gold standard method for measuring VO₂ max involves a supervised treadmill or stationary bike test in a clinical or research lab, where you wear a mask connected to equipment that directly measures the oxygen you breathe in and the carbon dioxide you breathe out, while exercise intensity gradually increases. This kind of test is sometimes available through cardiology clinics, university exercise physiology labs, or specialized fitness assessment centers, and it's worth asking your doctor whether this kind of testing is appropriate and available for you, particularly if you have any underlying heart or lung conditions. For a more accessible, everyday estimate, many wearable fitness trackers and smartwatches now provide an estimated VO₂ max based on your heart rate patterns during walking or exercise, combined with your age and other data. These estimates aren't as precise as a full clinical test, but they can still be genuinely useful for tracking your own personal trend over time, which, as with grip strength, matters far more than comparing yourself to a generic population average. There's also a simple, practical field test you can try without any equipment at all. The 6-minute walk test, commonly used by physical therapists and cardiac rehabilitation programs. You simply walk at a comfortably brisk pace, not a full sprint, just a pace that feels purposeful, for 6 minutes on a flat, safe surface, and measure the distance covered. Comparing this distance every few months gives you a genuinely meaningful, low-tech way to track whether your cardiorespiratory fitness is improving over time. If you have any heart or lung condition, it's worth doing this kind of test with guidance from a healthcare provider the first time, simply as a safety precaution. How do you improve VO₂ max safely at an older age? Now for the part you've likely been waiting for. How do you actually improve this number without pushing your body in ways that feel unsafe or unpleasant? Let's address something directly first. You may have heard that high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, is the single most effective way to boost VO₂ max. That's true for many populations, but very intense interval training isn't necessary, and for many older adults or anyone with joint issues, heart conditions, or who is simply out of practice with vigorous exercise, it isn't the right starting point at all. The good news is that gentler, more moderate approaches produce real, measurable improvements too, just at a comfortable, sustainable pace. Brisk walking with gentle intervals. Rather than punishing sprint intervals, this approach simply alternates between a comfortable walking pace and a slightly faster, more purposeful pace. Nothing close to running. For example, walk at your normal pace for 3 minutes, then pick up the pace slightly, enough that conversation becomes a bit more effortful, for 1 minute, then return to your normal pace. Repeating this pattern for 20 to 30 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, has been shown in multiple studies of older adults to meaningfully improve cardiorespiratory fitness over a matter of months. This can be done on a flat sidewalk, in a park, at a mall, or on a treadmill. Water-based exercise. Swimming and water aerobics classes are particularly well suited to older adults because the water supports body weight and dramatically reduces stress on joints, while still requiring the heart and lungs to work meaningfully harder. Many community centers and gyms offer water aerobics classes specifically designed for older participants, often at a pace and intensity that feels manageable while still providing genuine cardiovascular benefit. Stationary cycling. A recumbent or upright stationary bike allows you to control resistance and pace precisely, and it places very little stress on the knees, hips, and lower back compared to walking or running. Cycling at a moderate pace for 15 to 20 minutes, gradually building up duration and resistance over several weeks, is a well-supported way to build cardiorespiratory fitness with minimal injury risk. Stair climbing, done gradually. If you have access to stairs and no specific joint or balance limitations that make this unsafe, gently incorporating stair climbing into your routine, even just a few extra trips up and down a single flight, a few times a day, is a surprisingly effective low-time commitment way to build fitness. Always use a handrail for safety, and if you have any concerns about balance, it's worth checking with a doctor or physical therapist before starting. Structured cardiac rehabilitation or supervised group exercise programs. For those who have existing heart conditions, have had a recent cardiac event, or simply feel more comfortable exercising under supervision, many hospitals and community centers offer structured, supervised exercise programs specifically designed for older adults or those with health conditions. These programs are led by trained professionals who can tailor intensity appropriately and monitor for safety, and they've been shown to produce meaningful improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness, even in populations with significant underlying health challenges. Across all of these approaches, a consistent theme from the research is worth emphasizing. Consistency matters far more than intensity. Moderate activity performed several times a week, sustained over months, produces meaningfully better results than occasional intense efforts that aren't sustained. The goal isn't to exhaust yourself, it's to regularly challenge your cardiovascular system just enough that it adapts and strengthens over time. A few important safety notes. Before starting any new exercise routine, particularly if you have an existing heart condition, joint problems, or haven't exercised regularly in some time, it's genuinely worth having a conversation with your doctor first. This isn't just a formality. A doctor can help identify whether any specific precautions apply to your situation and can help you choose a starting intensity that's appropriate for your current health status. It's also worth paying attention to how your body responds during and after exercise. A moderate increase in heart rate and breathing rate is expected and healthy, but any chest pain, unusual shortness of breath beyond what feels proportionate to your effort, dizziness, or unusual fatigue should be taken seriously and discussed with a healthcare provider promptly. Finally, progress should be gradual. Trying to improve fitness too quickly, particularly after a long period of inactivity, increases the risk of injury or excessive strain. Building intensity and duration slowly, over weeks and months rather than days, produces safer and ultimately more sustainable results. A simple, widely used guideline among exercise physiologists is what's sometimes called the talk test. During moderate exercise, you should be able to hold a conversation, though it may feel a little more effortful than sitting still. If you're too breathless to speak in short sentences, that's usually a sign to ease off the pace slightly. This one simple check can help you stay in a safe, effective intensity range without needing any special equipment or heart rate monitor, although a heart rate monitor or fitness tracker can certainly be a helpful additional tool if you have one. Closing. To sum everything up, VO₂ Max, your body's ability to take in and use oxygen, is one of the most powerful predictors of long-term health and longevity that modern medicine has identified, in some studies outperforming well-established risk factors like smoking, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And unlike your age or your genetics, it's something you can meaningfully influence at any stage of life through moderate, sustainable, joint-friendly activity. You don't need to run marathons or push yourself through exhausting workouts. Brisk walking with gentle intervals, swimming, stationary cycling, or simply climbing a few extra flights of stairs each day, done consistently over months, can produce real, measurable improvements in your cardiorespiratory fitness, and along with it, your independence, your energy, and quite possibly, your lifespan. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. It genuinely helps this content reach more people who could benefit from it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself and keep moving.